In our webinar with Eddie Geller from SKOR, he brought up this notion of why employee engagement surveys and pulse surveys don't really work to address culture. And the reason for that is that they measure symptoms versus root cause, and they're more lagging indicators. It's kind of like an exit survey when a person leaves the company. There's nothing you're going to change there. They're already leaving. Like, how do you find that out sooner? And what he talked about was his culture assessment that measures the culture and how people feel about it before they say, I don't want to refer this company to my friend. I would not recommend anyone work there. So I really like this notion of measure things ahead of time, measure the root causes, address the root causes versus just the symptom at the end of it. Because if you measure the symptom, you're going to treat the symptom, and that's not going to solve the problem.
You and Eddie put on a amazing webinar, and I think anyone listening should go watch it because there's a lot to learn. And I think Eddie's doing a really cool thing with measuring culture. To measure culture, I feel like when you get the reading, yeah, to your point, it's after the fact, but you want to get there before you have to measure, right? Like if there's problems, you want to know those problems before you get the results, right? It's like going into the doctor and the doctor's like, well, I hate to inform you, but you have this. Well, you'd rather know when before the doctor tells you that you have it. So you're going to do stuff to prevent the doctor ever having to tell you what you have. And so I think there's things that we can do in the workplace, and that's just being open, being honest, being transparent, and keeping an open line of conversation. So when people aren't happy and loving their job and they're just showing up because they feel like they have to, you'll know. I think knowing those things before getting them in a pulse survey, you can take action. You can get involved and learn and adjust and do those things that might help that person.
What Eddie's doing is awesome because he's measuring the inputs. He's measuring, hey, I understand the company's vision and what we're about. Hey, I understand what my job is and what good looks like. Like, these are the things people are dealing with every single day. The engagement surveys and employee net promoter scores, they deal with after the fact. They deal with, are you happy at work? It's like, yes or no, right? Or how happy are you at work? Well, there's so many different things that it can affect it that if you just say, how do we fix people's happiness? You're going to be running in circles the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you measure and address the everyday life of people and how they're experiencing it, how they're engaging in the workplace life, and what's going well or not, versus, again, would you promote it to a friend? I read a really good book by this entrepreneur who said he did a lot of M&A and integrated a lot of companies into his own company. And he said when they asked the question about how likely you're to recommend this workplace to your friend, people were confused because they would say, well, we're only hiring in marketing. I'm in accounting. I don't know anyone in marketing, so I'm not going to recommend anyone. They would completely misunderstand the question. He said, this is not a really good measure of people really enjoying working there. So they focus more on earlier in the feedback loop. They would ask questions like, what is the stupidest thing we're doing as a company? One thing. And then people would share their thoughts, right? And if there's nothing that they would share, that probably means things are going relatively well. And they would say, what's one thing that you would change about this company right now? Or what's one improvement idea that you've thought about? And that way, the leadership can read that feedback. They can act on it. And then when they act on it, they tell people, hey, we've done this because we found out through that. But that's the way to address a lot of the things early on that could be culturally inefficient or just not working versus at the end, right? And that's kind of what the measuring culture with SKOR does, is you do it early, you do it often. And so you're always ahead of the game versus playing catch up based on the engagement survey.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of how we used to have a happiness check-in at the Motley Fool. And it's interesting because, a lot of people think that happiness comes from success, right? So, once you become successful, you're going to be happier. But I actually believe it's the other way around, right? By being happy, you breed success. That's, I think, the way it works, right? And so I can understand why companies, and the company I used to work for, why they were interested in measuring happiness, because they obviously know that, when people are happy, it leads to more success. However, the problem is happiness is self-reported, right? So I could tell you today that I'm really happy. Tomorrow I can tell you I'm not happy, right? Measuring happiness is tough. And I don't think it's a great way to kind of really gauge your culture. However, I like the intent. I like the fact that they were focused on personal and individual happiness. And I don't know if Eddie's survey touches in on happiness or not, but I do think that thinking about happiness is an important thing. And um, there's a lot of things that you and I know that kind of lead to happiness. Simple things like recognition and autonomy. Like all the research is out there that shows like, hey, you give somebody a voice and you make them feel like they belong at your company, they're going to be happier. There's probably ways to kind of not even need to do this testing or the surveying to understand stuff, because you're already putting these things in place that will kind of just enable people and empower people to be their best selves and show up and do their best work. And this stuff might not even matter to you, because you just know that you're doing what it takes to build a strong high performing culture.
Also, with a lot of companies that are not thousands of people, you kind of know everyone. Even if the company has 100 or 150 people, if you're in a role that would send an engagement survey, you're also in a role that knows everyone by name mostly.
Mm-hmm.
And not that
Yeah.
you can always talk to everyone and have time, especially when you're remote, but between you and your team, you can get a lot of pulse just by being the feet on the ground. Like, you don't need a survey to tell you whether people are enjoying their work, whether they feel like they have autonomy, whether they feel like they're getting recognized. You can see that and you can hear it based on what people are telling you. In my
Mm-hmm.
last company, we had something similar to what you had with this happiness coach. We had a steward, and the focus wasn't on happiness. It was was on, are you getting value out of your work? And everyone's value is different, right? What I
Right.
get out of work is different than what you get out of work, right? Some people value 9 to 5, they do their job really well, but then they have the work-life balance to attend to their family. Some people value the intellectual stimulation of a challenging project, right? Some people value the teamwork, whatever that is. And all they would be focused on is Una getting value out of her work? And if she is and continues to get value out of her work, that's a good proxy for Una's engaged and loving her job and loving being part of this team. And we would have one-on-one conversations with people once a month. This was a 150-person company. So it's doable, but it takes a lot of time. We didn't do engagement surveys or anything like that. It's like everyone knew everyone, and everyone, the stewarding group knew how people were experiencing the workplace and what they got out of their work.